Hello everyone, welcome back to the next installment of the Jurassic Live Rarity Rankings. This time it's the legendaries. The 68 legendaries, so this will not be a super short video. Yeah. Reminder that this is unboosted, full environment, PvP only, and of course, this isn't the right list, it's just my list. Let me know your ranking in the comments if you have the patience to type it all out. Yeah, let's get started. Anyways, number 68, and it's not even close, is Schoolosaurus. Schoolosaurus is so unimaginable. Like, Schoolosaurus is so egregiously bad, it's actually funny. Like, Schoolosaurus is just awful. There is nothing good about it. Like, it just. This thing, it's just awful. There's no point to anything about. I mean, it's a raid creature, yes. But being a raid creature does you no favors in a PvP ranking. Again, Schoolosaurus is awful. They may look at its base stats and say, that's not too bad. You may look at its distances, that's also pretty good. The problem is the move set. It only does 3,000 damage in 2 turns. 2,500 in 2 turns. And tip to scales is really bad in PvP. Group distraction sucks. I mean, group tonic shield strike isn't bad, and resilience strike isn't bad, but it doesn't do any damage to anything, and even though it has decent survivability, it'll get killed by everything because it's not doing any damage to them. This thing is awful. It's worse than most epics and most rares and a good amount of commons. Anyways, a good step up above Schoolosaurus at number 67 is Megalosuchus. Of course, Megalosuchus still sucks. It is still horrifyingly bad. This one, it's got really bad base stats, D-cell immunity where it doesn't help because it's slow, and a mediocre moveset. Frosty Strike sucks, especially on a counterattacker. Yeah, that's Megalosuchus. It's super bad. Number 66, Entelomoth. You guys remember when this thing was like the second best creature in the game? Back in like 1.12 to 1.14? Yeah. Now look where it is. I mean, it could be worse. Like, in version 2.0 is basically the same as it is now, except it had 3,300 self instead of 4,200s, and it was the worst legendary in the game at the time. But yeah, now it's still really bad. Decent health, low attack, decent speed, stun immunity. Persistent Ferocious Strike is really good. Mutual Fury is pretty solid. Group Shouting Impact's good. Bellow, not so much. And Minor Heal on Escape is good. It just, again, doesn't have enough damage to do anything, and it's not going to survive long enough to do much. So yeah, another really bad one. And it could be so much better if you gave it like 1,200 base damage from Enteldon and then gave it a Rampage. Anyways, number 65, Bahatonodon. I've seen people say this is worse than Schoolosaurus. No, it isn't. Stop lying to yourself. That said, it's still a really bad legendary. But at least it can do damage. 3750 in 2 turns. Its only damaging move is Resilient Strike, but it can heal a lot. And it's still super slow, of course. Because most Hadrosaurs are really slow. Got Stun Immunity. And a bunch of healing and a shield. Yeah, it's still not going to do much. 64, Culaborgiana. Tanky, bad damage, mediocre speed. Resistances are nothing of note, and a bad moveset. I mean, these moves on their own aren't too bad, although Invincibility is a straight downgrade of Invincibility Taunt. But, again, they don't work together. It doesn't make anything good. Number 63, Darazopteryx. Darazopteryx is it's just like Darwinopterus, but better. Like, it has a lot more health, same damage, a little bit less speed. It's got bleed immunity, which really doesn't help it at all. And then it's got minus super fierce impact, and then it's got resilient strike. Its invincibility kind of came out of nowhere, but it also doesn't help it very much either. Yeah, Darazopteryx, it's a swap-in bleeder, and that's it. Minus Swoop sucks, you're not going to survive for that long. Really, swapping wounds is the only reason you'd use this, but again, it sucks. Number 62, Pyritator. Now, the only super bad part about this thing is its health. 2550 is awful. But if you bumped it up to like 3450, which would make much more sense considering the ingredients, you would have a solid legendary. It's just the tiny health pool makes it so bad. Like, its other stats are good, its moveset is good. Just give it more health. Number 61, Gigaspikosaur. Low health for, like, really low health for a Sauropod, but it does have a lot of armor. Low attack and speed, typical Sauropods. No resistances. Group Sodium's, like, really bad. Short defense, kind of mediocre. Does have medium counter, and has Rampage, so certain one isn't too bad. Yeah. Number 60, Paramoloch. A fast Hadrosaur with decent health, high damage, high speed, stun immunity, and it's just the moveset isn't that very good. It's not a PvP moveset at all. It's Group Cleansing Strike, and it's in charge of its only like ways to deal damage, unless the group heal isn't exactly very good. Yeah. It's not doing much damage. It can stall for a while with instant charge and the shield and occasionally healing a little. But it's not going to kill very much. And that's what you need, is something that kills. Anyways, number 59 is Dakotanops. It's the weakest pure cunning legendary. It looks cool. Like, its design is really nice, but that doesn't factor into a ranking like this. So, low health, mediocre damage, super high speed, distract immunity. Moveset is not very good, though. Precise impact is not very good. Distraction, I mean, really just, it doesn't do enough damage, and precise impact could be better, and it just doesn't work well together. Number 58, Diloranosaurus. A cunning healer mix, and it sucks. Decent health, high damage, mediocre speed, and cunning sight, cunning impact are its ways of dealing damage with 2 heals. Again, it's not going to kill much besides maybe some like Chomper or something. Like it'll beat T-Rex. Yeah. 57, Utasinoraptor. It's another weak legendary cunning. 3 in a row here. Has a little armor, but it still has low health, decent damage, high speed. And its moveset is not much special besides the fact that it's instant charge. You could give this thing Pounce, and it would be really good. Well, not really good, but it would be okay. Give it Pounce instead of Distracting Impact. Because then it could spam multipliers, too. Yeah. Do not give it Swap and Stunning Strike, though. That would just be not good. I mean, not good as in it would be one of the most annoying things in the Legendary format. Anyways, number 56, Arctosis. A pretty new one, and one that is not very good at that. It is from mediocre rares, though, as its ingredients, so I guess it kind of makes sense that it's not that good itself. Mediocre, like, kind of like below average health, below average damage, below average speed, below average stats across the board. Diesel immunity is nice, but yeah, and its moveset, shielded heavy strike's okay, I guess. Electric Sounding Impact is really good. Group defensive edge is really just defensive edge. PvP is literally defensive edge, but also shields a bit, so it's not as useless. And again, Stomping Hero kind of sucks. Accelerate on Escape is not really particularly good. Again, damage output is not very good, and its survivability isn't enough to save it from that. Number 55, Parasol Alpha Slux, the first of the two, for the first of the two legendary non-hybrids. You already know where the other one is. If you don't, then you either don't know Jurassic alive or you're lying. Yeah, Parasol Alpha Slux is not as bad as it used to be before 2.9. Before 2.9, it had 3,900 health and no counter power heal. And it was just awful. It was the only legendary that was worse than it was Schoolosaurus. And that was back when Dragonistus was really bad too. Before 2.17. Then it got a little buff, and it's not quite that bad anymore, though it is still a bad legendary. 54, Spinotissuchus. The old king, back from the very old days. This thing was one of the strongest creatures in the game back in 1.5, which is my favorite version of Jurassic Alive because it was the most balanced. There's literally only one creature that was super unbalanced, and that was Direct Correction 2. And that was the best we'd ever get when it comes to balance. Plus, I like Spinosaurids, and they were dominant because it was the bleed meta, and they were bleeders. Now it's just relegated into the back and not useful anymore. It doesn't do any significant damage outside of the bleed. And it's also not particularly tanky either to make up for that. Sure, it's super fast, but that can easily get slowed down by a tank. And Cunning's, of course, wiped the floor with it. Number 53, Keratoborchus. I honestly think this one's kind of overrated. People think it's more of a mediocre legendary. No, it's a bad legendary. Sure, the stats aren't too bad and has stun immunity, but the moveset is just so bog standard fierce. Cunnings are just gonna completely delete it, and Mutual Fury won't speed it up enough to where it's gonna be faster than those Cunnings. So yeah. Number 52, Notapata This thing's one good thing is that it is ridiculously tanky. Otherwise, it's just bad. 5250 health with 40% armor is nothing to sneeze at. That is super tanky. It just doesn't do anything outside of being a big wall. I mean, its resistances are pretty good, and it does have an impact. But otherwise, it doesn't do much. The counterattack is negligibly small. Taunting Bell sucks. Yeah. 51, Ankintrosaurus. Yeah, I definitely underestimated this thing in the past, although it did also get a lot better with Medium Resilient Counter. Medium Resilient Counter is really good. But it's not enough to save this from being a bad legendary. It is reasonably tanky because it has 40% armor and its health isn't too bad. Its base damage is very low, but Medium Resilient Counter does kind of help, although not really enough. Slow. Resistances are nothing of note. Couple shields, Spirit Vulnerability, Taunting Rampage. Taunting Rampage sucks, but again, Medium Resilient Counter allows it to deal a little bit of extra damage. But the damage output is still not that great because its base damage is super bad and it only has one multiplier, so yeah. Number 50, Kobotoceratops. We're starting to get into the more mediocre legendaries from the bad ones. But yeah, Kobotoceratops is a little underrated. It's not as bad as some people say. That said, it is far from good. Super tanky. Insanely tanky. 4350 health with 50% armor is a lot. In fact, actually, it has one of the highest effective HP amounts in the game. In fact, I think it might even have the second highest effective HP. Yeah. But resistance is nothing of note, except bleed resistance on a tank, which is kind of weird. Distraction helps against fears, but it's too slow for it to be any useful against any good fears. Dig and Taunt Yeah, lets it get out, I guess. Devastation, deal damage. Spell's weak spot, does make him vulnerable for a while, but still not that great. If it had spirit vulnerability and like distracting strike here, it would be better because spirit vulnerability is so good and that it makes up for distracting strike not being good. And swap and headbutt is a little swap in that it can do. It's not going to do much damage with swap and headbutt at all, but it is there if you want to use it. 49, Pokai Day. A very stally cunning. Really solid base stats, and its resistances, it's got stun immunity, but the moveset is really bad. It has two basic moves. If it got Pounce instead of one of these two, it would be, like, it would shoot up into probably the top 30. Or at least the top 40, but probably top 30 too. But, nah, it just has strikes as its damaging option, so it doesn't do much damage. But it does completely destroy Fierce, because, I mean, look at all this distraction and dodge. So, yeah. Number 48, Ovilophamoloch. This one did get a slight nerf recently. Not a direct nerf, but Group Cutting Impact got its cooldown increased from 0 to 1, which honestly is a good thing because an impact of 0 cooldown made 0 sense. But it did this thing no favors. So, stats are typical cunning stats, although a bit lower on the damage side. Distraction resistance 50%, whatever. Devious Strike, okay. Alert Distracting Impact, alright. I mean, it's a basically critical distracting impact. Group Cutting Impact, alright. Sly, Rampage, and Run, I mean, the shield doesn't really help much unless you're fighting a counter-attacker or damaging on escaper. Critical on escape is one of the worst on escapes in the game, though, so there's nothing of note there. Just a run-of-the-mill cunning, even though it's actually technically cunning resilient because of that shield. Yeah. Still not very good. 47, Alankylosaurus. The thing that used to troll Indominus Rex back when that Indominus Rex was relevant. Tanky, the giant shield, swap invincibility, resilient rampage, which honestly I would like if it got spirit vulnerability instead of resilient strike here. And yeah, otherwise pretty basic tank besides the fact it has long invincibility and a swap in. 46, Rachakylosaurus, a very tanky counterattacker. Where are you? There we go. So, counterattacker stats, like typical medium theropod stats, except it actually has good health, and of course it has armor. And it's just resilient strike and a whole bunch of shields and a counter. Of course, Fierce are going to completely dominate it, but otherwise, pretty good. Well, not good, but not bad either. Again, we're out of the bad legendaries. 45, Sun Gaia. A little overrated, but still not bad. I remember back when this thing was awful, back before 2.11, when it was one of the worst legendaries in the game. It had like 113 speed then, didn't have any resistances, and a group decelerating strike instead of group decelerating impact. And I think Greater Emergency Heal was just Emergency Heal. But it got buffed. And now it's in mediocre legendaries instead of bad legendaries. Just a little bit, well, like 9 places down, we're going to get another one that was just recently buffed. Stats aren't too impressive, and resistances are not that great either, but the moveset is actually pretty solid now. Group Ferocity will do a little extra damage on the counter, and then you can just heal yourself to basically full health with it. Group Starting Impact deal damage, Shield Starting Strike is always good. Yeah, not bad anymore. 44, Monomimus. This thing has a history. Went from being OP to good to bad to even worse to still super bad to a little better but still bad, and then it kind of stayed there, and then it went up to actually good, and then it kind of fell into mediocrity from there. actually decent health for a cunning with average cunning damage, super fast, good resistances. Moveset is basically Prostrathamimus' moveset, except with a much better swap in, but without nullifying counter. It's basically Prostrathamimus, but tankier and faster, but with much less damage and no nullifying counter. I would say it's better, though. And most people agree. 43, Edaphoseivia. I remember when I overrated the high hell out of this thing. I thought back in the day, and like when it came out, that it was one of the strongest legendaries. No, it wasn't, but it's not bad. It's got constant multiplier spam with resistances that, while good, could be better. And stats are pretty basic. I mean, the multipliers kind of helps with the damage being really bad, but not really that much. Persistent Ferocious Strike is nice, and yeah. Still to get kind of destroyed by most of the good resilience and cunnings, though. 42, Glyptoceras. One that is a little underrated, but still not very good. If this thing had more health and maybe was a little faster, it would be pretty good. Like, give it 4,200 health and like 30% armor and 113 speed, and then get maybe D-cell immunity as well, and this thing would be really good. And honestly, don't give it Spear of Vulnerability, though. That would make it way too good. Yeah. This thing's main thing is it does a lot of damage. This Rampage alone does, I think, 3,250. And then that with Vulnerability, that would be almost 5,000. Plus his impact. That's like... That is over 6,500 in 2 turns, which is impressive. But it is not tanky enough or fast enough to really be that useful. 41, Dilophoboa. Where are you? Okay, so, actually not bad. Good resistances, mediocre stats, I guess, and actually a solid moveset. Honestly, Evasive Strike, Venomous Counter, actually pretty good. Swap Vents and Distracts. Sidestep, not bad. Nullifying Impact, nullifying is always nice to have. Besides Rampage for damage, Cunning Strike is Cunning Strike. Yeah. It's actually a not bad legendary. And we'll leave it at that. 40, Stegodius, another legendary that has had quite a history in the early days. It was the best legendary in the game for a time. And now it's kind of mediocre now. Still really tanky. But that's about it. Group Starting Impact. You're really just going to spam these 2 moves mostly, and yeah. Number 39, Centimoth. Actually not bad. It's got, it's pretty tanky. Persistent Ferocious Strike is, of course, really good, and then that plus an impact actually leads to some decent damage numbers. It's also got stun resistance, and it has a heal, just in case you need it. 37, Dreadactylus, the worst flock hybrid in the game, honestly really overrated. It's got bad damage and horrible speed for a flock, although it does have the highest health of a flock. It's 2 best immunities in the game, which is nice, but it has 2 really bad moves in Taunting Rampage and Group Disheartening Strike. And it's got medium counter vulnerability. They just called it counter vulnerability. If it had the full counter vulnerability, it would be pretty good. Stuck Landing is still a good swap in. Cunning Impact is still okay. Spirit of War, but it's still really good. But I just can't get over the shortcomings. The only good thing that it has is that it beats Rexy. 36, Tragodistus was the second worst legendary before it got buffed recently in 2.17. Basically what they did is they gave it Dispersed Spirit Vulnerability and basically just Group Spirit Vulnerability, and then Group Starting Impact instead of Group Starting Strike, added this counter, and gave it a much better healing move. So basically changes moveset up. Really tanky, of course, because it's an Ankylosaur. Group Superior Vulnerability. I don't know why they called it Dispersed Superior Vulnerability. They just called it. It's just called Group Superior Vulnerability, honestly. Group Stoning Impact is a good move. Group Taunting Shields is alright. Shelter is really good because it helps it heal a lot and it increases speed. And the counter allows it to deal a little bit of extra damage. I don't think it's quite as good as some people are saying it is, but it is still a overall decent legendary. We're getting into decent territory now. 35, Interruptor Gen 2. Another legendary that has had quite a history. It was added, it was OP, and it basically stayed OP until 2.0 when it became basically what it is now, a more decent legendary rather than overpowered. And I don't think it's gotten touched at all since 2.0. Actually, well, it did get crit reduction immunity instead of 75%, but that didn't make a difference at all. So, mediocre health with good attack and high speed. High distraction and stun resistance. Cautious Strike, which is really good. Mutual Fury is good. Distracting Impact, okay. Evasive Stance, eh. It's Indoraptor Gen 2. It's not going to do that much damage, but it can last a while, especially against Fierce. But of course, Cunnings are going to completely obliterate it. 34, Tyrannolophosaur. One that I must say is a little underrated. It's got average health, high damage, low speed, although for a Chomper, its speed is not bad. And its moveset is basically just a complete mix of Cunning and Fierce. Yeah, it's the anti-Chomper Chomper. Of course, it's not going to beat Rexy, but I think it can beat Allosaurus, though. And no, I don't think it beats Thor, but still. Okay, what's next? 33, Wrench of Scion. One that, while overrated, is kind of solid. Where are you? There you are. Low health, decent damage, high speed. Solid resistances, 75% decel resistance, that high speed is pretty good. Devious Strike. Instant Buff is actually a really good move, surprisingly. It's basically Sidestep, but Ferocity, but it has a cooldown. Fierce Impact. Alert Safety Rampage is the main reason it isn't higher than it is. Alert Safety Rampage just isn't good. You wanna run? Well, you're probably gonna be more than 50% health, because if you're trying to use this as a swap support, you're gonna be doing instant buff and then alert safety rampage. But you gotta be below half health for you to run. So swap support doesn't work. And then when you want to dish out as much damage as possible, then like before you die, then you might be below health, below half, and you're gonna do an impact damage and get out instead of do cleanse and a rampage. So it just doesn't work. And collision's a decent on escape. But for what it is, it's good despite its shortcoming. 32, Monolithmetrodon, another one that has had quite a history. Its big history is more recent than some of the other ones we talked about. So, it's added, it is pretty weak, and it stays weak, and continues to be weak until 2.0 when they make it super good and one of the best legendaries. And it continues to stay one of the best legendaries until 2.7 when they nerf it, and it's now it's where it is now. So it's got the two basic moves thing. Defense Shouting Strike is honestly not useful on it when Nullifying Strike is just better. Distracting Impact and Fierce Impact. Before it got nerfed, it had 50% Distract Resistance, Decel Immunity, and Fierce Rampage. And it was crazy. But yeah, still got super good resistances, still got solid stats, and its moveset, still good. Just not going to do crazy damage anymore. 31, Triastronix. A good raid legendary, but not like one of the better raid legendaries, but not super great for PvP, though again, not bad. Good resistances, like really good resistances. Decent health, good damage, good speed. Refresh is ready to. I mean, it's basically just like Irritator moveset, but with. Oh, sorry, Baryonyx Gen 2 moveset, but with a Rampage. Or actually more accurately, Baryonyx Gen 1 moveset, but with something you can use on turn 1 to increase the attack, and then an extra heal here, too. Overall, not bad. 30, Spinonyx. Where are you? There you are. Yeah, I definitely did overrate it in the past, but it is still not bad. It's got 2 rampages, which is, of course, always nice, and a bleed, and a really good basic move in minor raining attack, and no escape, and decel immunity. And overall, it's got a good amount going for it. It just doesn't really work in the current meta of Cunnings and Flocks. But not bad. Number 29, Monostegotops. Not underrated, overrated by a certain group of people. Why would I ever call this thing underrated? No, this thing is very overrated. It's a Ceratopsian, and I think a lot of Ceratopsians are overrated. Typical bad Ceratopsian stats, though not as bad as the other ones. And typical Ceratopsian move, it's basically just a Ceratops moveset, but with the greatest stunning impacts, the greatest stunning strike, and distraction here. Yeah. 28, Diplovenator. Actually not, like, we're actually starting to get from the decent legendaries into the good legendaries. But not great legendaries yet. Mid-level health, low damage, low speed, distraction and stun immunity. Moveset is where it shines. Precise Shadow counter, really good counter. Deafened Strike, really good. Instant distraction helps at the counter. And these 2 moves here, for it to deal extra damage and distract some more. Yeah, it's a cunning, fierce counter-attacker. Doesn't have any resilient, which a lot of counter-attackers seem to have. So yeah. It absolutely destroys fierce. 27, Connor Tarkus. Another one that I do think is a little overrated, but is still good. Pretty weak stats, but a really good moveset. Greater Any Counter is the best counter in the game. 2 moves that help stall really well, and a Rampage on top of that. And it's a group Rampage that helps against Flocks. 26, Ardontosaurus, a fierce sauropod. Sure, its survivability is, like, not good for a sauropod, but it does a lot of damage, and it has really good resistances, too. And it beats up, it beats up several tanks. So, yeah. While also not being too bad against some Cunnings, too. 25, Indominus Rex. Outside of Cloak, it has a very simple, fierce moveset, but Cloak just is just generally good. Also has really good resistances. The main issue is that it does awful against Flocks, and it is really slow. But it is still a good legendary. 24, Allosaurus. Basically Thor light. It doesn't have quite as much insane output as Thor, and it's nowhere near as annoying, but it is still pretty similar. It doesn't have the resistances. It does have better base stats, though. It doesn't have a Rampage and doesn't have a Cleanse, but it still has that instant charge, and it still has the basic Fierce stuff. 23, Acrocanthops. A really good Revenge Dino, and not much more. It's got Revenge Rampage while having insane base damage, so that's really nice, but it's also kind of slow, and its resistances are nothing of note, and the rest of the set is just there. Revenge Rampage is the only part you need to really pay attention to. 22, For Sora. Another one that has had a history. Instant Rampage is really the part you're going to be interested in, though. It's also got stun resistance and swamp finish immunity and decent damage, and for Cunning, its health isn't bad, and it's, of course, fast. Has delayed rampage and run and sidestep. But instant rampage is what you're going to be using it for. That's the selling point. 21, Smilophalsaurus. Similar to 4Rex, but it's debated upon which one's better or worse. I used to think 4Rex was better, but now I think Smilophalsaurus is slightly better. A little bit more health, less speed. It has a little bit more stun resistance and trades out the swap pinch immunity for some distract resistance. Evasive strike instead of cutting strike, which is worse. Deliver power instead of sidestep, which is worse. Precise bounce instead of instant rampage, which, I mean, you can debate which one's better, but I do think instant rampage is a little better. And rampage and run is obviously better than the delayed rampage and run. Precise bounce is really good though, and it can actually use it back to back with its other rampage. So yeah, it's good. 20, Sinocotoraptor. Another overrated flock, but this one is actually good. There's a reason it's overrated. Rather than just it being a flock. So yeah, flock stats, like its cunning stats, all those damages on the lower side. Distract immunity, because it's the only resistance here that matters. Distraction, this guy has it. Sidestep, this guy has it. Cunning impact, neither of them have it. Precise pounce, this one has. Alert the flock, only work. Actually, I think there's a glitch where it works on like all the time, which is weird, but really doesn't make it any like. Really, I don't think that makes it all that insane. And cautious on escape is there, I guess. So yeah, it's a good legendary. 19, Aramoceros. It's a sloth without a counter, which is a weird thing to see. Though if it had a counter in its current state, it would be one of the best legendaries in the game. Outright. So, average health, above average damage, good speed, resistance is nothing of note, and a good moveset. Shield of Starlight Strike is good, Camouflage is good, Digging is good, and Cunning Rampage is good. It's not going to do much damage, but it will last a while. That said, there is another deer hybrid that is a lot better. Number 18, Aloraptor, my old mascot. Yeah. Well, while I did heavily overrate it, and it is not a top tier legendary, I do think it is still a little underrated. It is a glass cannon. It is the definition of a glass cannon. It does not do well against flocks, but it does well against a good amount of other creatures. Frail, but with crazy damage output. Decent immune while being decently fast. Good resistances in general. And its moveset is... It's a glass cannon moveset. Running takedown, I guess, does a good amount to tanks. Has these two rampages to just do a lot of damage. And Cunning Strike is there too. Number 17, Grylanken. This went from being around, like, I think before the buff it was around, like, Triostronics level. Now it's all the way up here. Like, like, if the old Grylanken were in this version, it would be, like, probably not even top 30. But now, it's top 20. And almost top 15. So, its stats are like most Terror Birds, although it does have a little armor too. Bleed immunity from Kalenken, and then a few other resistances thrown in. Cunning Strike. Raking Claws. Main issue with it is its turn 1 kind of sucks, but after turn 1, it just goes. Raking Claws and Rampage run back to back for turn 2 and turn 3 is a lot of damage. And it's also got Evasive Stance, which admittedly it's not going to use very much. I think it'd be better if it had like sidestep so that it could speed itself up for setting up this turn 2. And Stunning Obstruction, which is something it got in the buff. Basically in the buff it got more speed, like plus 3 speed, and then Stunning Obstruction. And Stunning Obstruction is a really good on escape. It had no escape before that. It got that changed to Stunning Obstruction. Number 16, it's Godo for Scion. Um, yeah, this one is surprisingly good. It's got the two best immunities in the game. Um, Not particularly tanky, like it is somewhat frail, but it does have good damage, and it's not the slowest thing. And then Cleansing Strike, which is okay. Revenge Fierce Impact. On Revenge, it's a Fierce Rampage. You're probably gonna be bringing in and doing that into Decelerating Rampage to do as much damage as possible. Also has Revenge Protection for a shield if you need that, and No Escape, which is always good to have. So yeah, it's good. Number 15, Listasuchus. Top 15, we're now getting into the really good legendaries. Listasuchus is the first one of these. It is the Swapper Flock, although its turn 1 is also really bad. Actually good health for a flock, with a little armor on top. Damage, though, not that great. Speed is on the lower end for flocks. Resistances, they're there. Cunning Strike, Evasive Restore. Evasive Restore is just it's a dodge, a speed increase, cleanse, rally, heal, but it does have a delay, so you can't use it on turn 1. Thank God. Resilient Rampage, Stunning Impact and Run. Swap and Stunning Strike is the very annoying part of this thing. Yeah, you can probably see why I hate Swap and Stunning Strike. Low Tide is there too, I guess. Yeah, a good flock hybrid, and of course, like most flock hybrids, it's really annoying. Especially this one, because it has a swap in. Number 14, Scorpius Rex. While obviously nowhere near as good as Scorpius Rex Gen 3, it is also much better than Scorpius Rex Gen 2. So, it's got pretty average stats across the board, which is typical for a Scorpius Rex. Good resistances, and then it's got just a mix of fierce and cunning moves. It's got a camouflage, cunning impact, fierce strike, and then lethal quill shot, which is obviously worse than toxic quills, but it's still a decent move. It's obviously worse because it has less bleed and it isn't a stun, and it also has delay, but it is still a solid move because it still distracts, it still bleeds, it's still an impact. And it's also got critical ambush, which is a really nice swap in. Number 13, Mammotherium. This one has been consistently at the top for a long time now. Actually, literally ever since it came out, it's been consistently at the top of the legendary ladder. It has been top 20. It's been top 20 since it was added. In fact, really, until more recently, it was top 10, even top 5 some of the time. So, its health may look low, but it has armor, has high damage, mediocre speed, but that can be increased with Dig and Taunt to 127, which is really good. It's also got stun immunity, so you're not stopping that damage, unless you have a shield. And then Persistent Force Strike, which is obviously super good. Resilient Impact is a move to allow it to deal even more damage. Dig and Taunt is there to heal, heal quite a bit because of the high base damage, and also speed itself up and shield it. Taunting Bellow really isn't useful, but it's there. Yeah, this thing is a beast. 12, Dodecivia. A flock that is actually underrated. That's kind of a rarity. So yeah, second highest health of any flock. High damage, good speed. Resistances, really the stun resistance is the only one that matters. Flightless Strike isn't that good. Protective Alert is mediocre. Revenge Striking Impact, though, is good. And Berserker Alert Decoy is underrated. And it's a flock. The main thing of this thing is it just does mad damage. It does 5,500... No. 6,200... No, 6,302 turns. Yeah. That, I think, is the highest two-turn damage... second highest two-turn damage output of any flock in the game, behind Alodriguez. Although even then, Alodriguez's depends on its opponent's health. So, yeah. Really, that's the reason you'd use it. Otherwise, it's just there. But yeah, I value damage. 11, Dracoceratops. Probably the legendary with the most history. when it was added, it was awful, and then it was literally the best creature in the game for 4 patches in a row, and then it became kind of, it became kind of like, they're still super good, but it got kind of like not insane anymore, not the best creature in the game anymore, because 1.9 was a crazy update. And then 1.11 kind of made it a little more mediocre, and then 1.13 even more mediocre. And it kind of was mediocre until 2.0 when it became good again, and it has stayed good since. So yeah. Average to good stats. Swap engine immunity, which means you're not stopping and getting out once he uses cleansing impact. Unless you have like a damaging on escape. 2 fierce moves to bring on the hurt and cleansing impact to also do that. Keeps stun to stall, even though you're not going to use it all that much. Swap and savagery is the main reason to use it. So yeah, it's a swapper. Anyways, right above that is Mediocre, which is the best of the legendary swappers. Sorry, no, second best. I forgot about Thioconics. Yeah. I did overrate this thing, but it was the best legendary in the game for 1 patch, and that kind of sticks with me. See, yeah, all the legendaries that are better than it right now were added after it. Like Sealhouse is added in the update after in 2.9. But yeah, let's just get the Majestic Curse. So, its stats are worse than Dracoceratops's, but it also has a little bit of armor, so I think the effective HP might be a little bit higher. Resistances are obviously better than Dracoceratops's because it's like it's got these 3 here. And moveset. So, Fierce Strike still has that. Group Shield, which I think is good for a swapper to help it survive. Resilient Impact. Resilient Impact kind of combos into defensive running attack because of the vulnerability. Although before 2.9 it comboed better because what was I going to say? Oh yeah, because deceleration slowed down the enemy creatures so that you could get the defensive running attack, get the shield up before they attacked again. And then swap and Shattering Strike is of course the swap in, and that with a lot of swap in damage is really good. And it's got no escape. So yeah. Anyways, number 9, Tarbignathus. One that is overrated but is still super good. Like, we're getting into the great legendaries, like the best legendaries. So, health, bad, although it is a flock. Good damage. Speed is good, but on the lower end for a flock. Resistances are decent, although the only really good one here is the stun resistance. What's wrong? My internet messing up again. Okay, there we go. Alert Surge. Also, it's Courageous Alert. This is not precise here. It's a crit instead, and then this. Yeah, basically, Courageous Alert is Alert Surge, but the Secure Precise is replaced with the 100% crit chance. So yeah, Hop and Mock, which is really kind of mid. Alert Shattering Impact is good. If you're on 1 member, it rally heals instead of distracts though, and then otherwise it's a defense Shattering Impact with an extra cooldown. Fierce Impact for extra damage. Evasive Heal is really good. It's literally Alert the Flock, but without the constraint of the alert thing. Impact on Escape is a really good on escape. It's literally no escape, armor piercing impact. So yeah, this thing's a beast. Number 8, Antiloceros. Yeah, this is that other deer hybrid. This one isn't part cunning like Eremoceros is, but it is part fierce. Right there. So yeah, this thing, when it was added, it looked like it wouldn't be good, and then when people first used it, they were thoroughly surprised with how insane this thing was. So, good stats across the board, good resistances, and a good moveset. All around good. Mutual Fury helps this thing just do massive damage. 3,900 with that Rampage. And of course, Dig In helps it heal too, even with the Mutual Fury. And also, of course, has a revenge move, so you can use that if you want to. Although it's not as revenge focused as Entlochops is. But yeah, this thing is really good. Number 7, Sealhost. But yeah, this one's been around since 2.9 and has been consistently at the top since 2.9. So, um, it's got low, kind of mid-level health for a flock, but you know it's a flock, so that doesn't really matter all that much. Damage average, very high speed. It's got swamp fish immunity and stun immunity, which are good. Size piercing strike is okay. Fierce alert is good because it's a rally heal that isn't restricted to a swap in. And then restricted group distraction, precise impact to run all your main damage dealing moves, and then lure roost as an on escape. This thing is incredibly annoying too. It's swap support, it's a flock that heals, and it's just super annoying. It dodges and distracts a lot. Yeah. Number 6, Ankylodactylus. Another flock. Although this is the last legendary flock. Same health as Sealos, but with a little bit of armor. Less speed, less damage. Resistances are even better. It doesn't have swap bench immunity, but it doesn't need it because it's not a swap support creature. Side flap is... It's just literally sidestep, actually. Shielded evasive strike. Evasive cunning impact is ridiculous. It is actually instant evasive cunning impact. And then superiority rampage is good. Swap and shields is literally swap and defense. It is the exact same in practice. And then low tide is there as an on escape. But yeah, this thing is really hard to kill, and because it has shields, dodge, and distract, and it's a flock. Although it doesn't do that much damage. Number 5, Fukui Mimus. Yeah. This thing is incredibly annoying. High health with decent speed, mid-level damage, good resistances, group hunting strike, which, I mean, are you really going to use it that much of this thing? Because most of the time you're going to be using these 2 healing moves to just stall and then have your rampage out on turn 3 and then just keeps spamming heals and rampage. Persistent counter also increases the heals and the rampage, and it's got swap and distraction too. This thing just doesn't die, and it keeps doing damage, although it does take a bit to get going. Number 4, Ankyla Moloch. Until 2.15, this is the best hybrid in the game. Sorry, not best... Why did I say best legendary in the game? So yeah. Stats don't seem that impressive, but really the impressive parts of the moveset. Spirit Vulnerability is good. Taunting Brazilian Group Impact is good. Really all of these moves are good. Like, you do this, and then this, and then this, and it ends up being a good amount of damage. And also, it's swap support, it's survivable, it's just great. Anyways, number 3, the top 3. The newest legendary in the game, Technoraptor, is number 3. This thing is honestly just crazy. Sure, it's frail, and its base damage may not seem that great, but it's the second fastest creature in the game. It has really good resistances, and its moveset is just insane. Cunning Ferocious Strike into what is literally distracting devastation on turn 2. This thing does literally 7,500 damage in 2 turns. Yeah. Need I say more? Oh yeah, it's got Rampage and Run too for turn 3s for even more damage. So yeah, this thing does literally over 10,000 damage in 3 turns, which is among the highest in the game. While being incredibly fast. Yeah. Anyways, number 2, Thylaconics. What is there to say? It is an incredible fierce. Good stats, really good resistances, and a really good moveset. Crushing Prowl is basically instant buff, but better. Although it doesn't have speed increase. Devouring Wound is extremely good. It's literally defense shattering impact, but also with bleed and devour. Skirmish is just group fierce rampage. It's got a medium shattering counter, and it's got swap and savagery, so it has a lot. But Number 1 is unsurprisingly Rexy. You knew this when you clicked the video. You just wanted to see where I ranked everything else. Stats may seem like basic Chomper stats, but stats can be very deceiving. Look at those distances. Pretty ridiculous, right? And then the moveset is so crazy. Dominant Roar is one of the best moves in the game. Like, probably top 5 best moves. Possibly top 3. Basically, it's a priority. It's a priority impact that also adds ferocity. And it increases your speed to be faster than almost everything in the game. And then you can combo that with a Fierce Devouring Rampage, which will do an insane amount of damage because it has 1850 base damage. Then I've got to mention it has the highest crit chance in the game. It also has an impact, just in case you need it, but when will you need it? It also has a swap-in that slows by 100% for 2 turns, and it has a Fierce Strike on escape. This thing is busted. It even beats a good amount of Cunnings despite being a Fierce. And of course it destroys other Fierce in Resilience. This is one of the strongest creatures in the game in general. Not just the best legendary. But yeah. That's the list. Hope you guys enjoyed. Like and subscribe if you want. And I'll see y'all tomorrow for the unique ranking. Goodbye.